All right, so in that last section, we talked about controlled and uncontrolled elements. And now our React components know what the user types in the input. Now that you know all that, we want to make sure that if the user presses on the Enter key after entering some, whatever the search entry might be, um, we're going to want to somehow trigger a search for some images and then show those images on the screen. So if I go back here and type in flowers and press enter on my keyboard, I want to somehow trigger a search. What is that somehow? See, because you'll notice that when I press enter, it looks like the entire page refreshes and our search entry disappears. So at present, you're seeing the default behavior of a form element. Remember, we have form element right here. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is disable that default behavior. And we don't want the entire page to refresh automatically anytime that the user presses enter. So to handle this, we're going to find our form tag right here. And I'm going to add an event handler to it under the name onSubmit. Then I'll reference a callback method inside of here called this.onFormSubmit. So then after that, I'll be able to put on my event handler up here. So this is going to be called with an event object, and I do not want the form to attempt to submit itself and refresh the page. So I will prevent that behavior by calling event.preventDefault, just like so. So now if we flip back over to the browser and enter some text and press enter, well, look at that. No longer does the page refresh. So we've now got some callback here, and that's going to be invoked whenever the user types something in and presses enter. Now, as a quick exercise, let's just make sure that we can console log out the current value of the input when the user presses enter and tries to submit the form. This.state.entry. Now I can flip back over and I'll enter in some text, hit enter. Now, when I do it, I see an error message right here, right? Do you? Yeah. All right. So this is going to lead us into, some kind of interesting JavaScript territory. So right now, I want to start to figure out exactly why we're seeing this error message, okay? The error message, and the reason for it is going to be the absolute most common error message that you will see in just about every React project that you're ever going to work on. Without a doubt, you're going to see this error message. You know what? It's not even an exaggeration to say all the time. So let's first examine the message itself, and then we can get a better idea of the root cause of the issue. So the message here says, cannot read property state of undefined. Now, it might not sound so clear to you, but actually, it wants to say something like, I cannot access the property state on the value undefined. So let me give you an example inside of my JavaScript console. As you know, undefined is a value inside of JavaScript. In fact, if you've ever tried to access a property on undefined, such as undefined.state, we're going to get the same error message that we just saw back over there. Cannot read property state of undefined. So this error message right here is essentially telling us we're trying to reference an undefined state. But as you can see with our code over here, it says this.state undefined. So the root issue here is that JavaScript, for some crazy reason, thinks that inside of this onFormSubmit function, this is not equal to our instance of the search input class. Instead, it thinks that this is equal to the value undefined. And that's the issue right there. So here's a diagram of our instance of the search input that is created anytime we render a search input to the screen. The search input has a couple of different properties, such as state, render, onFormSubmit. Any code that we write inside of the search input, we are referencing the this keyword back to the class itself. So when we say this, we're saying, give us a reference to the instance of search input that we are writing code inside of. Then we can use that to get direct access to our state, render, or onFormSubmit properties. So, for example, I could say this.state, and it'll give me access to the state object that belongs to this particular instance of the search input. And we've already done that several times inside of our render method. So here is this.onFormSubmit. And in our case, we can't reference this line of code to the instance of search input class. So we have to somehow bind this to our search input class. And of course, just like anything else, there are many different ways to solve this. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you a couple. It'll be your choice. So let's see. So the first way to solve this, we can define our constructor function inside of our class. So let's go ahead and define it. So I'll solve this by binding the this method inside the constructor. And to do that, I'm going to say this.onFormSubmit equals this.onFormSubmit and bind this. So when we bind a function, it's going to produce a new version of that function. Okay, so this right here creates a new function that's going to always have the correct value of this, and the value of this will be equal to our instance of the search input. So then all we have to do is take that new function and overwrite the existing kind of broken function, right? So let's go ahead and check it, see it's working. So this is the highly recommended way of solving this problem, and you're going to see it, what did I say earlier? Like all the time? Well, frequently, at the very least. All right, so also what I mentioned before is it's only one way to solve the problem. So let's remove this constructor function and have a look at a second way. So the second way we can solve it is to turn the function right here that we are assigning to onFormSubmit into an arrow function instead. Now, I'm sure you're aware that arrow functions with ES 2015 are always going to lead to a broken value of this. Yet one of the special features of arrow functions is that they automatically bind the value of this for all the code inside the function. So we can replace this default implementation right here with this usual syntax that we've been using so far with an arrow function instead. The only difference is that this time around, rather than assigning an object, we are assigning an arrow function. So the arrow function is going to automatically make sure that the value of this is always equal to our search input. So let's have a look quickly. Let's save this and let's try running the code. flip back over to my browser, and I will type something inside of here, and then I'll just hit enter. All right, we don't have any errors. All right, so that's what I wanted to show you. That's it for right now. 2 ways in which we can solve this error. So I think that's enough for right now. I want to take a little break right now, and we will come back and move on in our next section. I'll see you on the other side.